Hello, Tiz and Kano, as some of you may know me. Otherwise, just call me Goon. Um, a while back, I think on the Elder Scrolls Amino, I did a poll about, doing an art tutorial, and I think the top choice was how I color skin. So, I cleaned up an older sketch here just because I enjoyed the cleanness of it, and the face seemed a nice place to start. Excuse me. If you hear a fan or music in the back, it's just me wanting white noise, and also it's hot in my room. So, I cleaned it up a bit already. I erased some fine details like the eyelashes and the eyelid tone and the lip tone, just so we had a clean base to start off of, because in the finished product, I don't like to have these lines on. I like to just leave it to be defined by the colors I use, because it makes it look more plump and full in the end, like actual lips, because the line just makes it look a bit garish. I'm just leaving kind of a base there to start. I'll just kind of erasing these lines a bit, because your sketch does not have to be perfect, because if you spend too much time on the sketch, personally, I find I have no energy to actually continue to color it, and I just leave it as is to die. But, yeah, let your art harden up and finish itself for you. Just trust the process is my main advice when it comes to that. So let's just, erase some of this grayer tone, so we have a nice base to start off with. It's okay to leave some definition as well. Don't worry about that. Art, you can always erase and redraw. I'm gonna leave that there just because I want it to come down farther. I like to give myself a nice guideline. Going to erase that there because that just goes a bit in too deep. So as that line there. Alright, so we have our face down. I'm gonna run through what brushes I use. Make sure you're on the actual brush and not the eraser. When I go through ibisPaint, I use ibisPaint X on my phone. It's a really wonderful app. I prefer it to MetaBang and Autodesk Sketchbook just because of the variety of brushes and stuff I get. I use dip pen hard. You can press that plus there to add it to a custom brush, so it's basically like favoriting a brush, and you can find your history right here. These are all the brushes I use, really. The dip pen I use to put on solid colors. Flat brush is for like really rough, putting down values. Soft pastel, that's for putting in more value, of course, and it's an easier brush because it's very soft and it blends in. Does a really nice blend. Let me just undo that so I don't ruin our sketch. And I use the sputtering and pointillism for freckles. And I use the hairbrush for hair. I, of course, if you click this hand up here and put on force fade, for the hairbrush, I like to put it at 25% start and 50% at the length of end, and put it on linear. And the hair will look it'll do that for you, so everything blends in nice and smooth. You can pretty much count the individual strands, and it looks like wisps of hair instead of like that, just chunks. So that's how I do hair. It's also what I use for eyebrows, so I can just, that's a bit too big, put it real small, do individual hair strokes that way. I always start going up here, just kind of fading it down as I go, and then starting at the top and kind of going more towards the center, and then just keep doing that until you reach down here to where I just do that. And occasionally I'll just underline that too. There. Nice defined eyebrow to start. Just a intro to my brushes. Airbrush, I use that for overlay layers when I'm trying to lay down color zones of the face, which I will get to here in a bit. An Oriental Shanshui brush, one of my favorite as well. It's another nice blending brush. It's also nice to lay down hair as well if I think the hairbrush isn't like quite fit. I also use it for most of my line art and shading around the eyes and the nose, as well as the lips. Mostly like the finer areas of the face. For these I like to use more blurred out, softer brushes. So I'm gonna get into it. I pulled up a picture I can color pick from because when it comes to skin and blending it later down the line, color picking is going to be your best friend. I go to a part where I know I don't shade a whole lot, specifically the neck, because I tend to neglect the neck. I'm gonna go for a nice middle tone here. You generally don't want to start too light or dark on your skin when you start coloring it, because then it's just hard to fill it in later. I'm going to go to dip pen. Occasionally I will, yeah, it's way too small, and I need to take this off because that just gets annoying when you're trying to make a full solid color. I'll go to felt tip pen because it's a really large pen to cover big areas where you want a lot of color. Then just kind of fill in a base. If it looks pink and stuff, don't worry. You don't have to worry too much about the initial skin tone because as you shade and whatnot, it'll kind of define itself for you. And if you still don't like it, there is such a beautiful thing called an overlay layer, which will basically overlay any color you have. Like, let's say, let me just finish this real quick. Just the face. I'm not going to worry too much about the ears. This isn't an ear coloring tutorial. Plus, I have a hard time drawing them. Overlay layer. Say, I'm going to put clipping on because then it doesn't go outside of that base you put. That's what I do with my shading anyway. I never like to just shade the base unless it's I really want to. Overlay layers tend to lighten and also just wash over the original color. So if I wanted like a more yellowed out skin tone, I'd take that and just do this. And it still looks like skin. Say I wanted a more red tone. Sorry, that's my boyfriend. Do that. Even if I go outside, it won't color outside. But it still shows us huge. But I'm gonna clear that because I'm just introing. But I need to show you how I'm gonna color zone the face, so I'm gonna go retrieve a reference real quick. Alright, I'm back. I pulled up one of my favorite references to color zones of the face. Pull that up so it's nice and big so we can read it. Color zones don't extract the line art. That turns it black and white and hollow. They really help make the skin feel alive. I usually tend to color pick it just because it's a bit easier that way, and plus it's a nice muted tone. As it says, explains here. I'll leave it here just to you guys can screenshot and read whenever you'd like. But yeah, this will make the skin feel more full and alive, so it's not just one flat tone. So I'm gonna go with doing the basics first, and then I will probably go right in here. So I'm gonna hide this. I usually put it on an overlay layer, so I also put this on, usually this color zone layer, I airbrush it because I do not want it to be too hard. It's usually a nice red around the cheeks as well as the nose, as well as the ears too. The ends of the ears are usually pretty red. Alright. People, also, I do a lot of makeup, so sometimes my makeup knowledge comes into this as well, and I'll just put a lot of blush and shading right there just to make the skin feel lifted. I'm gonna go in with that yellow. Keep in mind this, I usually turn the opacity of this layer down as well so it isn't entirely overwhelming. And let's grab this blue right here. This is basically like the 5 o'clock shadow. I don't put it too bright on women because they don't tend to have that much of a 5 o'clock shadow as men do. Now the basic color zones are done. I'm going to go in and grab this orange. Put it around the area where I get a lot of acne. Gonna saturate that a bit more just so it gets a chance. And this picture goes with the blue. I like to keep it more like a purple. I'm gonna use the blue down here and just because skin tends to make you look a bit darker. I should not have said purple, I apologize. There. Under there, we just get you some blue because you are always tired. As well as, I believe we put a yellow around that lip area. I was correct. I'm gonna go color pick from here though. Seems a bit easier. And I don't do it too rough, just kinda, yeah, it's a bit garish. Do that is just fine. Because usually light hits right there when you're like wearing lip gloss or something and you have a bit of oil on your face. But that is, you know, sometimes there's a basic vein tone up here as well. So you can go in with like a purple as well, maybe even a red. But overall, it's not going to matter too much. I'm going to put the nose bridge white like that reference photo. And just like that, we are done. I thought the upper lip had something going on. Nope. 'Twas wrong. Anyway, I always put the opacity down, not that low, but I want you to see the difference it makes in making the skin feel a lot more real, in my opinion. It also liven up a bit more as you color, to which I'm gonna start shading now. So I'm gonna put a clipping layer, and I don't really put it on multiply or anything unless I really want some shadows like this, which we'll get into later. Excuse me. I'm gonna go with this tone right there because it just seems a second color down, and we are going to go to Oriental and start too opaque, shading out some basic shapes. Like I said earlier, your art, the shapes, everything will solidify for you later on if you let it. Seems like the light's coming from here, so you're gonna want to shade the hair falling over the face. Put something there. That's never that dark when I finish it, but I like leaving that there as a base. Doing something like this. I always get like a shadow right there on my face shape, which is very similar to this. So if you have a character whose face shape is very similar to yours, don't feel bad about using yourself as a reference. It's very useful, especially if you do makeup like me and you know where light hits, where shadow hits, where you want to highlight, all that good jazz. I'm not going to shade this too much because I feel like I want to put a lipstick tone there. There, we've got some basic shapes going, and I'm going to see about highlighting the face with a much lighter tone here. For a highlight, I really like blow it out and make sure it's not too opaque, because you don't want just this all over the face, you know, solid blocks of light. Just gonna top of the chin, into the nose. You usually get some right there, but I'll leave that for later. You get some there, and the bounce off of light with your nose. Always, your eyelids are oily. Under here, it's always pretty dry. That's why eye creams exist. Brow bone highlight. Brow bone highlight. She's not an elf, so I'm just gonna blow it out a little bit. Leave that there. Sometimes you want to highlight is here as well, but that'll make the jaw look a little bit more strong, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm just gonna tone it down a little bit. Okay, that's some basic shading of the face done. Now we're gonna see about fine-tuning it, which I take... When I'm color picking, I look for places where it's just kind of blurred like that and go for that right middle tone. Color picking, like I said, your best friend when you're coloring skin, especially when you're shading and trying to get everything to look smooth as possible and not really blocky like this. I'm gonna take that there, start lightening that up a bit, as well as around here. Not that looking too hard. Around here to make sure the edges of that are nice and blown out. Here as well. I'm going to take that over that highlight I put down just to make sure it's not looking too fake right there. It all just depends on how strong I want that part to look, about how this highlight ends up staying. Put this around there, because the light is coming from this direction, so you don't have to worry about leaving so much of a highlight right there. And, just keep doing that, really, until you got something nice and smooth that you like. Go for the lighter edge shade right about there, I'd say. Start blowing that out. That's a bit cool of a color. I'll go right there. Just do that. Really make sure everything, don't be afraid to go big and really keep things smooth and blah blah blah. You may be wondering why I don't just use an airbrush if I want everything smooth and put together, but airbrushes, they don't fill out lines as much as this, and I feel like that's more for like a highlight thing or a blush thing, just general like large color zoned areas of the face rather than actually coloring and shading, because everything will look very I don't want to say anime-y, but pillowy, if that makes sense. It just doesn't look like correct, like solid, in my opinion. Now as for highlight, that was desaturated in the first place, so don't be afraid to just color pick that entirely. Take that around. I usually saturate it a lot around here and just highlight the Cupid's bow, as well as like down here, because people highlight there when they do their makeup, so don't be afraid to highlight it there as well. You can blur it out. Sorry, I say blow out a lot. But that's totally up to you. I don't like that. It's just a bit too strong. A bit of a zone there. This always, you want that a little bit more solid, so there's some definition between the nostrils and just your nose. Don't want it too solid though, because there's always just a bit of a shadow here when your nose is pokes out and doesn't have a nothing's ever a perfect smooth base. I just take that there as well. Then I take this, kind of tap around, see about color picking. Shoot, always pick that button, making sure everything looks smooth and neat. And depending on how your art is, you may want texture, you may want this brushiness. Sometimes this brushiness is really aesthetic. It looks pleasing to the eye to some people. That's how my shading used to be, so don't be afraid to just kind of leave it at this stage if you really want to do that. The nose is the hardest part about shading for me personally, because it changes. It's so easy to completely change the entire shape of the nose with just one swipe, really, and it's hard to make sure it's tame and makes sense. Take that over here. I'm gonna put some shadow right there on the temples, because that happens. And I'm gonna go color pick this again, because I'm not sure where to go from there. I'll find a slightly darker tone, like that one, I think. And how dark is that compared to this? Not too much darker, which is perfect. Your nose tends to be shiny, so I like to put some nice bounce lighting on the edge. I don't care to make it too saturated. I can make it a bit more saturated around here. And then do that, as well as around here, because you tend to have really deep shadows right there. People highlight right here in their cornea, the corner of their eye when they do makeup, so that's how I generally go about that. Do this. Tends to be darker on this crease, so don't be afraid of going dark. Tends to be dark around here as well, not that saturated. So I just do that normally, and take some of this tone and light that up a bit. So it looks like there's some not emotion under the eye, just some definition right here, so it looks more rounded and not just a flat Nikki Tutorials looking kind of thing going on there. No shade, I promise, but yeah, that happens. My voice sounds very rough, I apologize. I just blend this out. You tend to be just a tiny bit lighter there. Depending on how large you want the nostrils, you can go in as far and wide as you want, really. Now to blend this out a bit. Okay. I never really ever go full opacity unless I'm like doing makeup or really wanting some rough values like that, really. So that's a thing to keep in mind. I rarely ever go saturated. And alright, so from here on you kind of got the basics. If I feel like the skin needs a little bit more life, I will put another overlay layer over this one just to add some like personal touch. I'm gonna take like a nice peachy tone and bring it around here, as well as just over the lips a bit, like around here. I'm going to take some slightly more purple and brush over this. as well as do that under here. If it's too saturated and stuff, you can always just go and erase it, but this is just what I enjoy doing for my art personally. Then I take another normal layer, especially if I just do the lips. I'm not entirely sure because I change the lips like 900 times whenever I'm drawing, so that's a thing.
Commander, a word.
I apologize for my notes, my notifications being that way. I'm gonna take let's just see how that is. I want her to be wearing lipsticks, so I'm just gonna go with a nice rich shade. The thing is, if you want it to not look so lipsticky, you really just blend out the edges and be sure to especially highlight some glow and glossiness right there, perhaps. Make sure this isn't a harsh line, you know. Take this. It's okay if it looks a bit weird at first, I promise. And just trying to figure out what I want to do with the eyes next after this. Sometimes I will take the blur brush and just do this along the edges. Maybe not on the top one, because the top one you kind of want defined. Color pick that. Go with just something slightly cooler, darker. Do this all around the lip. The light is coming from this area, so you can just do a bit something like that. And there'll always be a bit of bounce lighting right here if you have a really glossy lip deal going on, but generally you don't have to do that. I'm gonna choose a nice middle tone there and start lightening that hard edge up, because you don't want it to be really hard right there. If you know, like I said, there's usually a bit of bounce sliding between here and there. Sometimes I go and just grab a little bit of that line art tone. That's why I just don't like doing like a solid black line for my general outline, because I do like to have this opacity to help figure out some darker tones. This isn't a perfect lip shape either. I'm just kind of going with whatever. Like I said, it all hardens up just the longer you're drawing and whatnot, so trust the process. Thing is, just if I tell this to everybody, because I learned this from one of a artist I like, a drawing you don't like is only half finished, so just keep going. Don't give up on your artwork. It leaves it dead and it makes it sad. Now I'm gonna go to where I kind of blended that out a bit. I'll grab a lighter shade. Generally lips kind of go in like that shape, so I try and keep that in mind when I'm highlighting. Do that a bit there, especially right here. Okay, I mean that's not the right placement, but I like to just make sure it looks nice and 3D. Make sure it kind of tapers down towards the middle, because it's never ever that bright. I'm not sure I like that light tone. Go with something like that. You may not see the difference like I do, but that's completely fine. Just keep tapping. I just draw nice taps usually. I said, there's usually a bit of bounce light right here, so I just do that. And I will soften that up just a tiny bit towards the center, because you usually have a line right there where the seam of your lip kind of goes in. And sorry, I have no idea what to fill this with. Just casual silence. There, it's a start. You can always look at a reference, keep refining it, go as you please. And I take something a bit more saturated and just kind of do that. Some places I think it would be. Now, as for the eyelids, I think I'm pretty happy with that. I'm just going to go back to that original normal layer, work on the eyelids a bit more. Again, find a nicer, darker tone. Which ones did I use? I'm going to go for that. That one. And just keep solidifying, keep darkening, blending out, darkening, blending out. That's really my whole process. I also usually use reference. This is just me kind of shading as I know. Can always brush that out. I don't want it going that dark. It starts kind of dragging the face down, so I will blend that out in a second. I just want to darken that bounce up a bit more. Solidify the end of the nose, as well as like right there. Maybe some of that shadow coming down from the hair, as well as just this area. You don't have to just keep shading that. I like doing it because it just starts matching the rest of the face. Alright, then just keep doing that again, finding the tone, blending out. That got a bit solid. Go in again, blend it out. Go on with that highlight. Cover that up. It's okay if you mess up and it gets muddy. You can always go back, find those highlight shades again, redo it. Like so. It's all a matter of just trusting yourself, honestly. Art is very forgiving. I think it's that overlay layer, kind of. Yeah. I'm gonna hide that while I shade the base. It'll make things a lot easier. If you're having a hard time with the Oriental brush, I would go with this, not flat brush. The soft pastel. It leaves a bit of texture like that, but you can always take the blur brush and go over it. It's very easy to blend out, make it look soft. And it just looks nice and natural. Gonna take some of that tone, brush that over that. Your eyelids are never ever this shiny. That's just my personal. I did not want the text brush. That's just generally how I leave my eyelids, and I never pay too much attention to this area, which is bad on me. You kind of do want to be practical, pay attention to your art, because the more attention to detail, the more people appreciate it, in my opinion. There. And I need to blend this out, so I'm gonna take this tone. My first instinct is to go with the blur tool, but I'm trying not to rely on that too much because it can make your art look very airbrushed, and I personally don't like that. I'm gonna find that dark tone again. See about that nostril. Don't be afraid to be a bit more saturated here because it's your nostrils. You kind of want those. You want to breathe. And take that tone and kind of do that there. So let's just, here we are. And as you just keep doing that, it'll be good. Just selecting, color picking, reminding yourself of where the light is hitting, so that this will be where the more shadow is. That's never really that deep, so I just blow it out a bit. Grab that tone, brush it out further. There. That's kind of basically how I do my skin. Put that overlay layer back up. And as for my highlights, I usually make it its own layer. Sorry. I put it on screen just so I don't have to keep going wider and wider. It'll kind of stay the same tone where you want it to. I'm gonna rename this highlight because it's a white layer. I can never tell if I have stuff on it, so it's just safer for me. Do a bit of highlight there. Now on your highlight, you can make the nose look as crooked and weird as you want. Just gonna put some here, something there. I go just a little bit here. And as for the cheeks, it all just depends on if you're a makeup guru like me. Go here. And that's generally how I color skin.